Good evening, everybody. My name is Adam Jacobi of GoIowaAwesome.com, and we'll jump right into this one. We've got a very special guest today, as we've mentioned several times, and we want to get this show rolling and make the most of his very important time. So I will be joined by RossWB, of course, but also a man who, needs no introduction for about 99% of Iowa fans, but since we're generous people, I'll go ahead and introduce him anyway. Former all-time Big Ten leading quarterback, former Heisman runner-up, former captain of the Iowa Hawkeyes, and a man who is as synonymous with Iowa football as just about anybody in the world. The one, the only, Chuck Long is joining us today. Gentlemen, how are we doing on this? I can't really call it a beautiful day, but how are we doing?
Doing great. Cheers, fellas. You guys.
Thank you.
Cheers to that.
I'm doing well. I'm also doing well. Happy to be here.
Excellent. So this is first and foremost a chat-driven show. We are here for the Hawkeye community. So we will be taking your questions. So if you've got anything to ask Mr. Long, any questions about playing for Hayden Fry, his perspective on this season of Iowa football, anything that you've got, go ahead and pop into our chat there. And while you're there, go ahead and hit like and go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. Not only does it make us feel good about the work we do, but it helps YouTube understand that this is a fun time for Iowa fans. It helps bring more of them in, makes our community bigger, stronger. It's what we like. So with that, Chuck, I guess let's start off with the basics. You're with the Iowa Sports Foundation, and as I understand it, the office there is in enemy territory.
Well,
what's your day-to-day like?
Day-to-day, I'm with the Iowa Sports Foundation. I'm a CEO and executive director of going on my 7th year. One of our pillars, we have 5 major pillars. One of our pillars is Iowa Games right here. Okay, so that's our major pillar. We just came off of Iowa summer Iowa games of about 10,000 participants for the summer. And then we have winter games as well. But we have 5 major pillars. We have Iowa games. We have Live Healthy Iowa, senior games for people like me. I'm over 50. We have Adaptive Sports Iowa for people with physical disabilities. And we have corporate games, which is really companies fighting it out for a trophy and embedding their health and wellness within those companies. So we have Des Moines corporate games. We have the corridor corporate games in Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, and the Quad City. There you go. You have your medal. I like that, Al.
Yeah, I do.
But the Iowa games have been generational. I mean, it's been passed on since from 1987 till now. It gets handed down generations. But as you said, Adam, I always tell people I do a lot of speaking engagements, a lot of Rotaries, a lot of Kiwanis, that kind of thing. And I tell the people in there, never say never. I'm a Hawkeye and my office is in Ames, Iowa. You just never know. So anyway, I've enjoyed it. I have a great board. I have great sponsors. And as I said, I'm going my 7th year. You guys will find this fascinating, but this is the longest job I've ever had. I've never had a job really more than 5 years in my entire career because I was in the football world because you get fired all the time.
Right.
For sure. Yeah.
So this is the longest tenured job I've ever had at 7 years, believe it or not. So I'm pretty proud of that. I'm pretty proud of that.
You should be. Congratulations. And
that's fantastic.
Yeah, and yes, I am a silver medalist in the Iowa corporate games. Now, full disclosure, it was for trivia. So, there probably aren't a whole lot of corporate games or Iowa games or anything else that come staffed with a bartender. But The medal's all the same. The medal is all the same.
Yeah.
But yes, I've been happy to hang on to this for quite a while now. So in Ames, do you get recognized very often?
Our
Do they
office
know
is
you're a bad guy?
our office is right off of 30 and 35, that corner.
Sure.
There's a little industrial park there. It's right next to DMAC up there, and there's a come and go. So I go to the come and go to get gas or get, whatever I need to get in there, drink and coffee. And every single time I go in there, it seems like they have a different worker every time. And that worker just looks at me like, "What are you doing here? What are you doing?" and I say, "Don't ask. Hey, don't ask. It's a long story. But just ring me up and I'll be on my way. I'll get out of your hair." That kind of thing. But anyway, it's that come and go right there at 30, 35. And they look at me funny every single time.
Have you been in Ames? Has the Iowa Sports Foundation been in Ames the whole time you've been with the organization?
Right. Well, yeah, most of our events and programs and challenges, or, our summer games are basically on the Iowa State campus with all their facilities. Jamie Pollard's a great partner of ours. He's been great with us, along with all the athletic directors across the state. But it started in 1987. It's been there ever since. So I came in, I looked at it, I said, let's not upset this apple cart. It's right in the middle of the state. It's easy for participants from all 99 counties of Iowa to get to the center of the state, as opposed to way far east or far west. So it's just a perfect venue for everybody to get to. So let's keep it here in Ames. It's great facilities, wide open, plenty of parking. It's been a wonderful relationship with Iowa State, and we're going to continue to have those games from here on out on our campus. Now we have the State Games of America coming next summer. So this is every 2 years. We bid for it. Long story, 5 or 6 years ago to get the State Games of America, which means not only Iowans participate, but we're going to have participants from all 50 states come to Ames, Des Moines corridor. That whole corridor from Des Moines to Ames will be flooded with participants from all over the country, probably 5,000 more participants. So it's a big task. It's a big endeavor. We're excited about it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, and in terms of a job like this, everybody understands that the world has changed in the last 18 months or so. Do you have any, unique challenges for trying to organize events like that, athletic events in particular, amidst, a pandemic? Does that make it substantially more difficult to do your job, or are you guys able to ride this out pretty well?
Well, as we all know, the pandemic has changed the world probably forever. And we definitely had our challenges, especially from March 2020, especially the year of 2020. We had our challenges. We had to go a lot of virtual events. So we adapted. Our staff did a wonderful job of adaptation and getting some virtual events going to lead up to this year, 2021, back to our in-person events. And when people became obviously aware of COVID and vaccinated and, became smart in how to manage it, we were able to do most of our in-person events as we had in the past with safety precautions in place. So we didn't have any COVID issues, I should say, coming out of our summer games. So we were happy with that, and our protocol and our staff did a wonderful job. And we want to keep everybody safe first and foremost with our summer games. But people were excited to come back. They came back, but we managed to work around it and work through it. 2020 was more of a challenge than 21, but 21 we were back strong.
Excellent. That's great to hear. That is fantastic. So, are you able to keep up on the current Hawkeyes team with your schedule?
I have, yes.
Excellent.
Yeah, I do a podcast with Hawkeye Report every week with Tom Kakert. So, he tells me you better keep up with everything because we got to talk about it. So, I do keep up with everything.
Excellent.
And it's been an interesting year to say the least.
Yeah. So, what do you think about? I mean, it's probably too broad to say. What do you think about the season? But this is sort of rarefied air for Hawkeye football, and there's very few people who understand what it's like to be in Iowa City and leading a top 5 team. But one of those people is you. What changes about the job that you have to do once there's all that national attention, once there's that, I guess you could call it hype, is it much of a struggle to handle that pressure, or is it just a take care of today, worry about tomorrow sort of situation?
Well, that's easy to say, but you have to handle that pressure. When you get to be a top 5 team, or and in Iowa's case, number 2 in the nation, before the Purdue game, the higher the expectations become. And I think that they rose really fast, really quick. In a perfect world, you'd like to just notch your way up till the end of the year and get there, but they were there so fast. And all of a sudden, when you're there so fast, you have to. It's a whole different rarefied air. People expect so much of you. You're number 2. You can't do wrong. It starts to set in your mindset. Hey, we got to hold on to this. And a lot of times many times teams will say, we'll get to that mindset of we got to hold on to this and play not to lose this instead of playing to win every single week. The one thing that was a challenge or an issue was this is a young football team in Iowa. It's still young in many ways. They graduated a lot of folks. Their defensive line and offensive line are very young. And so all of a sudden you have these expectations. It's hard to handle that. And for, being in coaching for 20 years like I was, it's hard to get your team to understand where you are and what you have to do to maintain that, because you're going across campus as a player and you're getting, everybody patting you on the back and saluting you and praising you, and you can't help but let that sink in.
Of course.
And now with social media, as you guys know, with social media, that's all a whole different animal. I can't handle social media. I can't even imagine working with social media when I was a senior at Iowa. I mean, we were still cocooned or in a bubble, so to speak. But these guys aren't in a bubble anymore. So with all the social media, and just to be able to handle that, everybody singing your praises and how well you're going to do with a young football team. I knew it was going to be a challenge for them. Obviously, they ran into a tough situation at Purdue that brought them down to earth, so to speak. But they rose really fast, really quick. And now, as a head coach, you're trying to get your team to stay focused every week, knowing that these expectations are so big right now.
Right.
So I got a question for you. I know there's always a cliche that, when you're up there ranks, really high, number 1, number 2, you get the other team's best shot. When you were playing in those games, did it feel like the other team, the opponent was giving you a little bit more, or it was just, a little bit harder than it was if you weren't ranked, quite as high? actually, manifest on the football field, really?
Yeah, I believe so. Matt Brown, the North Carolina head coach who was at
Mm-hmm.
Texas. I coached at Oklahoma for Bob Stoops, and Matt Brown was an arch rival at Texas. He made a great statement one time, and I think there's a lot of truth to it. He said, in reality, teams really get up for 3 or 4 games a year where they really get up for that game. The rest of them, you better maintain and make sure you out-coach them and have good game plans, because kids don't get – it's hard for kids to get up fired up for 12 games in a row.
Sure.
Really, reality is 3 or 4 games they really get up for. The rest of it, you better be able to manage it and out-coach them, et cetera. And I believe that that's true. When you're on top now, to answer your question, Ross, when you're on top, you're going to get everybody's best shot. That's probably everybody's 1 to 4 games I'm talking about, right?
Right.
That they get up for, hey, we're going to knock Iowa off that plateau. In 1985, we went in, we had high preseason expectations from day one.
Oh, yeah.
So we got everybody's best shot. We played Drake and Northern Illinois the first 2 games, and we got their best shot. we ended up winning the game, but we got everybody's best shot that year. And when we vaulted to number 1 early in the Big Ten season, it felt like we got everybody's best shot from there on out. That was their 1 to 4 games of getting up for us that year. And hey, coaches on the opponents, the coaches, they circle that team. Hey, we're going to, if we beat these guys, we're going to be on the map. Here's Iowa number 1 or number 2 in this case this year. We beat these guys like Purdue did. We're going to get back on the national map, which helps in so many ways, recruiting, et cetera. You put it in the resume the next year in the media guide. There's no more media guys anymore, right, guys? But anyway.
They're all online.
Yeah, they're all online. So you put it, Purdue's going to put it in their media guide. Hey, we beat number 2 Iowa, and that's going to be a selling point for them for recruiting. So that's why you get everybody's best shot.
Well, I mean, Iowa's certainly been on the other side of that too. We've seen that with our Iowa success in those top 5 games against, Michigan in 2016 and Ohio State in 2017. And, they've got that great record, against top 5 ranked teams. So well, I'm sure you look at those games as, those were some of those 1 to 4 games where Iowa, all the, the Iowa players were locked in and really ready to go for those games.
And that's a good point, Ross. On the flip side, the Ohio State victory, they still talk about it, right? Everybody still talks about it.
Of course.
A
little bit.
Everybody knows what 55-24 means.
Yeah. It was a great victory. So that's something that's in the Iowa media guide, sort of.
Exactly.
And then when Harbaugh came into town, I think they were like 3 in the nation or whatever they were.
I think they were 2.
And Iowa beat them, with Josie Jewell linebacker. That's something in the Iowa media guide as well. So on the flip side of that, you're right. Iowa has used that in recruiting and et cetera. All those little things add up in recruiting, especially in that arena, but it also resonates with the fans. And I mean, how many fans are going to go away from the Penn State game a couple of weeks ago and, saw one of the greatest victories of all time in Kinnick Stadium, with the great pass to Petrus to Reganey at the end of they're going to remember that forever. So those are little things that will add up over time. But that's what you try to gain, those little things that you can put in the media guide, put in your video, recruiting video when you show somebody in a living room, et cetera. Those add up.
Chuck, we got a question from one of our faithful viewers, Clinton. Yeah. He says, Chuck, what's the best and worst thing about being a quarterback in college football? Go Iowa, go Iowa. Awesome. Go Quad Cities, go Bettendorf. Shouts out to Bettendorf. But to the question, what's the best and worst thing about being a college football quarterback?
That's a good question. Well, the best thing is when you're winning games, everybody likes you. That's the best thing. It's the worst thing is you do feel the pressure of the program on your shoulders. I think that's one thing. When I was a quarterback at Iowa, I felt like I had to prepare twice as much as the next guy on the team. I just wanted to make sure when I got in a huddle or I stepped on the practice field every day that I didn't want anybody on my team to think, oh, Chuck is not prepared. He's not ready. He's not ready for this moment. I never wanted anybody to think that. So I was always concerned about what other people were thinking of me on my football team. I want to make sure that I crossed every T and dotted every I and worked that much harder than the next guy. First one on the field, last one off the field is the mentality I tried to adopt when I was a quarterback. So with that, there's a heavy burden to that. You have to prepare twice as much as the next guy on the team because you have to know everything, what everybody's doing, and get them all in the right situations. So there's a lot of preparation for a college quarterback that wants to strive to be the best that he can be or get his team to the best that they can be. And so that there's a lot of pressure to that. I did feel the pressure of being a college quarterback at Iowa daily, obviously, especially during the fall. You had to do a lot of sacrificing, which I did. It was film study instead of going out and having a beer, one of those things. And, that's what you did. That's what I did. I was okay with that, but I want to make sure that I was prepared for the next guy on our football team. So I think that was that's just part of the job. I didn't understand that at first when I came out of high school. High school is high school. You're having fun with your guys and just going with the flow. Football's over, you go to basketball. Basketball's over, you go to baseball, etc. When I got to college, it was just a whole different mentality of, and then when you become good as a football team or got better as a football team, and you're striving to get better and better, and all of a sudden you've arrived or you're arriving as a football team like we did under Hayden Fry. We went to the Peach Bowl, the Gator Bowl, Freedom Bowl, Rose Bowl. Now you feel the pressure of maintaining that, so to speak. So that all sets in, and hey, we're good, but we have to stay there. And it's one thing to climb to get there, but it's also a different whole reality of staying there. That's just as tough. And so that's what I felt every day. I don't know if I wouldn't call it the worst part. I mean, that's just part of the process, but you realize that, the pressure's mounting as you win more and you want to maintain that, or you feel like you need to maintain that as a quarterback. Sure. But and then once you're winning, though, it's pretty good. I mean, you're having fun. Campus loves you, and everybody else is having fun with you, and I enjoy those moments too. But there's a time and a place for that too, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So you mentioned obviously, the success came under Hayden Fry, and but in terms of the pressure, in terms of you setting those expectations for yourself in terms of your preparation, how much did playing for a coach like Hayden, how much of a role did he have in helping you manage that pressure and get prepared? How much of a role did he play in that?
Oh, a huge role. Hayden was special in many ways, but he was especially special when it came to managing his team, pushing all the right buttons, and especially at the quarterback position, because he was a former quarterback. He played quarterback in high school in Baylor, and he was very successful in both arenas, high school all-state quarterback, and then went on to become a Baylor quarterback. And so he knew that he knew that arena as far as preparing for, a quarterback to play. The best thing about him was in the highest pressure moments, he made you feel just nice and relaxed. He'd either crack a joke, tell a funny story, from way out there, and just to get you to relax a little bit. He knew when you were tense. He was uncanny about that. He just knew you when you were tense and bottled up, and maybe you weren't going to flow in the rhythm of a game, and he just got you relaxed and back on the concentrating on the task and game without feeling that pressure. I've had a lot of coaches in my time. I've never been around anybody else like him when it came to understanding the pressure, getting somebody to relax with it, and play at their optimum, at their best performance. He just knew how to do that. And that's why he was so special. Not every coach knows how to do that, but he knew how to do it. And he knew that not just with me, but just with many of the guys on the football team. You know how to push those buttons, but especially at the quarterback position. We had a great relationship, obviously, but we had great chemistry. We knew each other. I got in his jet stream and knew what he was all about. And I used that later on in my coaching. When I was a coach for 20 years, I used what he did for me with other quarterbacks and got them to understand the same thing through time. But he was magical that way. It's hard to put into words how the feeling of it. But there's plenty of games I went into that I didn't realize the pressure of the game. I went in there just relaxed and played ball. And then coming out of the game, be like, oh, man, that was a big game. that was a big game we just won, and didn't really realize it until I read the Big Peach the next day at the morning register, But that was the magic of Hayden Fry.
Yeah. So speaking of coaches, you had a stretch of about 4 or 5 years where you went from being an assistant to Hayden Fry to an assistant for first-year head coach Kirk Ferentz, to an assistant for Bob Stoops, which is a heck of a run. But for as successful as all of those coaches were, they're definitely unique personalities, like very, or at least from my perspective. And you would know better than I would, but it certainly seems that they go about the work of coaching in with sort of different approaches. Mm-hmm. So what were some of the differences that you noticed between those three guys, and what did you pick up on? What did you say, oh, I like that, I'm going to take that for myself when I coach?
Good question. I'm reading your comments over here, and one of the comments is, how did I feel when I heard the name Bo Jackson called?
Oh, yeah.
And I always tell people this. I say, Bo Jackson won the Heisman Trophy, but I'm the much better athlete, guys. I know, I'm just kidding around. Anyway, and that's a good question. In all walks of life, whether it be business or coaching, whatever, you take a little bit from your mentors along the way. And I've certainly taken a little bit from my mentors. A fourth mentor I need you to mention is Bill Snyder of Kansas State, because he was really another mentor of mine. I had really I was very blessed to be coached by two collegiate football Hall of Fame coaches. Maybe arguably the toughest turnarounds in college football history at Iowa and Kansas State.
Mm-hmm.
So I was coached by Hayden Fry and Bill Snyder at Kansas State, at Iowa. I mean, who could say that? Two college football Hall of Fame coaches. So To answer your question, Hayden, I mentioned just the aspects or the elements that I took from him, how to deal with people, how to, manage a game, keep it fun for guys. Hayden what I learned from Hayden was at the end of every practice, he had this thing called cheer, CHEER. It was written on the bottom of his script. Okay. And you had everybody has a script or a schedule of practice. He had cheer at the bottom, and it was his fifth quarter, meaning regardless of how practice went, he'd gather up the team and he'd give some kind of motivational cheer. Somebody had to come out and crack a joke, tell a funny story, just to keep it funny. And I'm telling you, there's a lot of times where it was a bad practice and no one was in the mood for that. But he insisted on it. He said, who has a cheer today? So somebody would raise their hand, they'd go out in the middle and they'd tell a story or crack a joke. Everybody would walk off with their arms around each other, laughing and giggling. But that was a purpose for him. He wanted everybody to leave the practice field on a positive note, regardless of how practice went. That was important to him. That's what I learned from him. Kirk Ferentz, I was with him his first year, and I'll share a story about Kirk. We were in our first spring under Kirk. He just got hired in December. We went through winter recruiting, and then we went through spring football. So we're just getting to know our football team. Mm-hmm. I've already been there, so I knew most of it. He was just starting to get to know it, know his team. And so we decided to have a softball game, on the softball field behind our facility. Yeah, let's have a softball game. We'll get some brats and burgers and pop, and we'll go out there and have a good time, get to know the guys, build some chemistry. And he just hired his staff, and it was really a good staff at the time. Guys like Norm Parker, of course, Phil Parker was on that staff. Ron Aiken was a gem of a defensive line coach. Mm-hmm. Brett Bielema was on that staff. He actually carried over. Brett and I carried over from the Hayden staff, and so we had a number of. Ken O'Keefe was a coordinator and quarterbacks coordinator and receivers coach. I was a quarterback coach. Anyway, we had a good staff, and so we're playing softball with the guys, and we split up the teams, and we're having fun. And I think the coaches were like we batted, but we're like, the umpires and all that kind of stuff, and let the guys play. Yeah. And at the end of the spring softball game, Kirk was picking up garbage in the outfield. He had a bag, he had like one of those hefty bags, and he's picking up garbage. Here's the head coach picking up garbage in the outfield, right? Yeah. And I'll never forget Norm Parker, the late great Norm Parker, coming up to me, and I love Norm, one of the great coaches of all time. Mm-hmm. He came up to me and said, "Chuck, he's picking up garbage in the outfield." I say, "Yeah." He said, "Is he always like that?" I say, "Yeah, that's Kirk. He'll roll up his sleeves and work right along with you and pick up the garbage along with you." He goes, "Man, that's pretty cool." So Norm never really saw that before, I guess, and it was really a surprise to him. And I knew that about Kirk because Kirk and I came in together in 1981. He was a rookie O-line coach. I was a freshman quarterback. So I'd known Kirk for a long time, and I knew his makeup. But it really, I guess, stunned Norm Parker that here's this head coach picking up garbage in the outfield after a game, But that's what I learned from Kirk. Just here's a guy that he'll roll up his sleeves and work right along with you. He's not one of those head coaches that says, "Hey, you do this, you do that, and I'll be a head coach over here in my office," right? Yeah. And then Bob Stoops was same kind of a guy. He was a no-nonsense guy. There's no gray area with Bob. That's the one thing I learned from Bob. There's no gray area. Either you do it or you don't. There was no excuses with Bob. He never made an excuse publicly. In fact, our whole mantra in 2000 was no excuses. And we won a national championship off of that, off of that mantra. And he loved what Bob brought to the field was he wanted his coaches to have a lot of energy. He did not want a tired football coach on the field. And I'm sure you guys know and heard the stories of football coaching. Coaching is long hours. Okay. Yeah. Some guys go from 7 a.m., 6 a.m. to midnight every day. Well, Bob didn't do that. He sent us home at 10 o'clock. So you guys get home and get your sleep. I want the energy on the field. And there was countless times, men, that we would go into opponents' stadiums and we get out on the field in the pregame warm-up and see all the opponent, all the coaches that we knew from the other side, and they were tired. They were exhausted. They had, bags under their eyes, and we would literally walk off the pregame warm-up knowing we were going to beat their butt because they were so tired. And so that resonated with me with Bob Stoops. He wanted a lot of energy on the field. He wanted he did not want a tired football coach. He wanted guys that were fully engaged, not tired, with a lot of energy. And that's what I learned from Bob, and it paid off. We were very good at Oklahoma when we were there.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So one quick Kirk Ferentz story from that exact same year. It was so I was a student at the UI in the year 2000, and I had season tickets to the men's basketball program. So there's one day where we're walking through the field house, like from the dorm through the field house to get to Carver Hawkeye. And it's winter, so you cut through and you stay warm and all of that. And so we're walking through this hallway, and there's a door that opens up next to the hallway. Door opens up, and sort of college parent age type of people start coming out. And it seems pretty clear that these are like recruits' parents, or maybe players' parents, or something like that. And I look back over again, and Kirk is holding the door for everybody coming out, and I was like, this guy makes he's got 2 commas in his yearly salary, and he's still holding the door for everybody. And that was when I knew. And I didn't exactly know what it meant, but I knew that he was a different apple, a different breed. And I was like, I think I feel pretty good about that. Like that's a character moment. And I remember, like, I did a little double take while I was walking by, because I was like, that's him? And he just gives me this little nod, and he was like, yeah, and a little smile, and that was that. And I was like, man, I can get behind this guy. So I love that softball story. I'd never heard that before. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes, and your story is good, Adam, because he's always been that way. He grew up in the old offensive line world. Mm-hmm. And when you're in that world, you don't have any notoriety. Nobody knows who you are. You're always, it's grungy. It's, it's, you roll up your sleeves. It's dirty, that's just the way the old line world is. And he grew up in that world. So there's a lot of work. I mean, there's a ton of work at that position. And so he knew that. And that's where he got his work ethic from. And obviously it's paid off for him, after being, so many years as a head coach at the University of Iowa. But that's the world he grew up in. I'll never forget when I was a player at Iowa, and we both came in together. But you go into Kirk's office when he was the offensive line coach, and it was always dark. He never had a light on. It was always dark, and he had like this little lamp on, and he was watching film all the time. I mean, when you're the offensive line coach, you're watching film all the time because you have 5 guys to coach. I mean, you have to watch each guy, number one, and then you have to watch the defensive lineman, number 2, what they're doing to you all the time. But all the other coaches had their lights on, but him. You go in there, he's in the dark, and you could barely see his face. He had like a little light on his face, and that was it. And you wondered sometimes if if he was in there. He was always in there. You knew he was in there, but you kind of had to find him. But anyway, that's just the way it was, and that's the offensive line world. I had somebody on the comment page ask me about my high school days.
Ray, yeah,
about our offense in high school. And you guys, and some good research by Ray here. Ray saying, we only threw the ball 5 to 6 times a game in high school. I don't know if you guys knew that. We won a state championship my junior year in high school in 1979. And I set an Illinois state record that day that will never be broken. Now we won the state championship. I have my medal from the state championship game in 1979. But I set a record that'll never be broken, gentlemen. I threw for -3 yards in that football game.
That just screams.
Can you believe that?
Heisman finalist. Right?
I was 1 for 4 in that game.
Oh my goodness.
-3 yards. And Ray is asking me on the comments, what kind of offense do we run? We had a military head coach like Hayden Fry. Jim Rexilius was his name, and we ran the ball right down your throat. I mean, we were 200 to 300 yards rushing a game, and we played great defense. And that was his philosophy. I learned from him that it doesn't matter your philosophy and what you believe in, as long as you get your players to believe in it. If you get your players to buy into that, any system can be successful. And I believe that from my high school days, because we didn't throw the ball, but we ran it right down your throat, and we were really good at it, and we had a great defense, and nobody could stop us. So, hey, guys, I threw the ball 5 to 6 times a game. They were so wide open, I couldn't miss. I mean, I couldn't miss it. We ran it so much that when we threw it, they were wide open. So I'd roll out and I go, oh my gosh, don't miss, don't miss, don't miss.
So the pressure started early.
Yeah, pressure started early.
So I've got a question for you. So circling back to the season at hand here, Iowa is going to Camp Randall this weekend. And first of all, we've got one of our chat people says, would you rather have like 2 big pass plays, but only get a couple yards per carry, or establish the run a little bit more, but not be able to break a big pass play? Neither of those sound great. I just want to be clear. But what do you want to see out of Iowa's offense when they head up to Madison this weekend?
Well, I know it's very simple, but they have to move the ball. I mean, it's right now where Iowa's offense is. It's going to be a challenge from here on out to manufacture yardage and points. They have a young offensive line to begin with. Okay. It's probably their youngest in a while and most inexperienced in a while. There's no Tristan Wirfs up there, guys. Okay. Yeah. So they have Linderbaum at center, but that can only go so far.
There's only one of him.
That's your center. And really your key people get to the outside where your guards and tackles are. So it's going to be really challenging from here on out in the West Division. Every game, you look at it on paper at the beginning of the year. Hey, these are all winnable games. Everybody said that, right?
Yeah.
But when you have an offense that's not scoring or moving the ball, really back end of the country, I think 118th in total offense, whatever it is. When you're that way or last in the league in a lot of offensive coordinators, offensive categories, you have a challenge every single week to win these games. Going up to Madison, guys, is going to be tough. It's going to be a big challenge. They are on a roll right now. They've found their niche running the football. They're not throwing it well, but they're back to what they want to do. Iowa's offense is a lot like theirs. Iowa's offense is really predicated on finding a run game first. And Tyler Goodson's a good running back. They have to find ways to get him more than 12 touches in a game. They've got to get him up to 20 or more touches in a game. That's going to be key. Get Tyler Goodson 20-plus touches in this football game, regardless of how they turn out. You got to find a way to get him that, because he may get stuffed 6 to 8 of those, but you're going to have a number of those where he's in medium yardage, and then you might have one where he can pop it for the long game. But you just got to find ways to get him the ball and get him that ball. When I was an offensive coordinator, when we had good running backs, I always had a pitch count guy next to me. All right. So I had a GA or somebody. And I would say, look, you tell me every quarter how many times that gentleman has had the ball. That guy's had the ball. I want to know. I didn't care what the score of the game was, what we were doing. I wanted to make sure that guy got 20-plus carries in that game. So Brian Ferentz needs a pitch count guy right next to him to say, and this is to answer your question. He needs a pitch count guy to say, how many times has Tyler Goodson had the ball? Got to get to him more than 12 times, guys. As simple as that. I had a guy named Adrian Peterson. You know that name, don't you? So I had a guy named Adrian Peterson at Oklahoma. Well, I would have been really stupid if I didn't get him the ball 20 more times, right?
Yeah.
And I had Bob Stutz, my boss, saying, hey, Charlie, he called me Charlie. He said, Charlie, make sure you get him the ball enough times. I go, I know. I got a guy right next to me who's going to tell me how many times he's had the ball. So I think Brian needs that right now, is somebody to tell him to get him the ball 20-plus times in that game. That's simple to say that. I want to get into more detail. I think they need to have more misdirection in their offense, meaning they're an inside zone, outside zone type blocking scheme type team. They need to get some pulling guards and tackles in their system, where they're actually pulling from the other side, getting extra hats on the other side. I think it's a line that is not ready for pushing people off the ball right now.
Yeah.
Because they're young, they're not strong enough. They need more weight room work. They're a line that could use angle blocks or down blocks or double team blocks and pullers to help them out. Those are schematic things that I think they should do. Maybe the off week they will work on that. It's hard to get some heavy play action downfield shots unless you get some run game going first. Wisconsin, they're going to load the box, 8 to 9 in the box, and they're going to dare us to throw the football is what they're going to do.
Oh yeah.
And they're really good on defense. I mean, guys, they're really good.
Oh, their numbers are right up there with Iowa's.
They're right up there.
They're frightening. Yeah.
So they're frightening good. They're at home. It's going to take. Can we live off of turnovers? Hopefully we can. It's hard to bank on that every single game, as we found that out against Purdue.
Yeah.
And before Sean Clifford got hurt at Penn State, that was going to be a struggle as well. He got hurt. We ended up winning that game, but Purdue caught up with us because they just protected the ball. So if Wisconsin protects the ball, we have our work cut out. Can we sustain those long drives offensively consistently? Remains to be seen. But the first thing I would do, get Tyler Goodson the ball more than 20 times. I don't care what the score is. You have to do that.
I agree. I agree
Yeah.
completely.
So do you have any,
Um,
speaking of
go ahead.
Camp Randall, do you have any memories of, playing games there? I know Wisconsin wasn't as good as they are now back then, but
Yeah,
you would have played them a lot.
I
we
was
were like
literally
15,
about to ask that.
yeah, we were like 15 in a row against Wisconsin.
Yeah.
It was never an issue with us going up to Camp Randall. It was more a fun stadium to go to back then, because that crowd back in the day, win or lose, and most of the time they were losing it in those days.
Yeah.
Before the Barry Alvarez years.
Yeah.
They were just going to have fun. They're going to have a ball, and they brought the great band out after the game. We'd heard about that. We would stay after just to watch their band because they were so good. But Camp Randall was not a menacing presence like it is today with the jump around in the fourth quarter. It was nowhere near that back then.
Sure.
The only great story I could tell you is our freshman year. We went up there. My freshman year in 1981, we went up there, and they threw like eggs on Hayden Fry. They doused him with eggshells and eggs and like coins and beer and everything else coming out of the tunnel. And Hayden complained about it so much that they built this cage over the tunnel from then on out. And I think that cage is still there. But Hayden was so mad about getting doused with eggs and coins and beer and everything that he made a complaint to the Big Ten office, and they built this cage and protected all teams from there on out. So that was Hayden's doing. That's the only thing I remember about it. But we had a 10-10 battle against Wisconsin in Kinnick Stadium, 1984. It was a brutal game. They actually had 3 first-round draft picks off of that team. So they've always had that kind of talent. Al Toon was one of them. Remember Al Toon?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Al Toon was their wide receiver, but they had 3 first-round draft picks off that team, and they were really a solid football team, and they beat us up. They broke Ronnie Harmon's leg in that game. It was a brutal. I remember being just a brutal football game, and we ended up with a 10-10 tie on them. That was about as close as we ever got to Wisconsin and losing a game when I was there.
Yeah. So, all right, we are. Boy, time has flown.
What time is it? We're having fun.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
So we're not going to try to take too much more of your time. So first of all, thank you for joining us and for these stories, which have been just beyond our highest expectations. But while we've got you here for a few more minutes, I mean, obviously talking about this game coming up, and it's especially for Iowa's Big Ten dreams. This is a big deal of a game. Do you have a prediction yet? Have you decided?
Oh my gosh, I'm the worst predictor in the world. All coaches are. I have a story. I would back in the day, I'd have my buddies call me up and want me to predict, and I'd predict, and then like 2 weeks later, they say, "Chuck, you're the worst predictor in the world." I said, "I know." I obviously I want Iowa to win. That's my prediction is Iowa with a win. But for all the Iowa fans out there, it's a tough challenge going up there to Madison right now. It's going to be a heck of a game, and really, it's the pole position for the West. The winner of this game is in the pole position to win the West. So that's what it's coming down to right now. I think the key is finding a way to stop their running game and getting Mertz, their quarterback, to try to throw the ball to beat you. Iowa's key is try to find a way to slow that running game down. And they have 2 backs up there at Wisconsin, pretty good. So if they can find that formula, they'll be in the game and have a chance to win at the end. But of course, I got to go for the Hawks going up to Madison, right?
Of course. Yeah.
We went up to Madison back in the day and we beat them, so why not?
That's all I need to hear. That's all I need to hear. All right. Well, Chuck, gosh, thank you so much for joining us. This has been an absolute blast. So I will remind everybody to support the Iowa Sports Foundation. So we've got Iowa Games, Corporate Games, Live Healthy Iowa, Senior Games, Adaptive Sports Iowa. Be sure to support all of those endeavors. And what was the National State Games? Was that the name
State
of it?
Games of America coming next
State Games of
summer
America. Yeah.
in late July over about 4 or 5 day period. But we're going to have now not only our Iowa athletes, probably 12 to 13,000, but also 4,000 to 5,000 out of staters from all 50 states. So we're fired up about that.
Fantastic. And we'll also remind everybody to listen to Chuck on the Hawkeye Report podcast. You do great work there too. And, the more Chuck Long content, the more media we get out of you, the better. So make sure everybody is listening to that. And your book, Destined for Greatness, the story of Chuck Long and resurgence of Iowa Hawkeyes football. I know that you've got an audio book of that out. I've seen hard copies of it too everywhere. So be sure to pick that up. Chuck, anything else that you want to mention while we've got you?
You guys have been great. It's been a lot of fun tonight. And I'm going to get ready to watch a little Ted Lasso after this. So one of my favorites right now on TV. But cheers to you guys. You guys are great tonight.
Thanks.
Cheers. Go Greyhounds.
Yeah, go Greyhounds. There you go.
And with that, I mean, we couldn't end on anything else. So with that, my name is Adam Jacobi of GoIowaAwesome.com and the Iowa Sports Review, joined by RossWB, also of GoIowaAwesome.com. Special thanks for the 1,000th time to Chuck Long for joining us. With that, go Iowa Awesome. Go Hawks.
Thanks, guys. You guys are great. Thank you.
Good night.